If you're sitting on a 3% mortgage and feel stuck because moving feels irresponsible, this conversation's for you. Feeling uneasy about the idea of moving doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the way you're thinking. For a lot of people, the fear isn't just higher payments. It's the worry that years from now, they'll look back and think, we had it so good, why did we mess that up? But that doesn't mean the move is wrong. It usually just means the rate has taken on more emotional weight than the rest of the decision. Having a mortgage rate around 3% can feel like you were in the right place at exactly the right time, almost like you won the lottery and ended up with a deal you shouldn't mess with. What complicates this decision isn't just the math. For a lot of homeowners, that low rate has come to represent safety, prudence, and good timing, all wrapped into one number. So even thinking about moving can feel irresponsible. Not because the move doesn't make sense, but because the rate feels like something you'd be foolish to give up. That's exactly why this question isn't answered with a simple yes or no. In some situations, giving up a 3% rate really is a financial mistake. In others, it isn't a mistake at all, it's just uncomfortable. The problem is that those two experiences can feel almost identical. And until they're separated, it's very hard to move forward with confidence. Over time, a low interest rate starts to feel like something you own. It feels like it has tangible value. And in a narrow sense it does, but it isn't an asset you can sell, transfer, or cash out. The only way to keep it is to keep the loan and keep the house. That's where the conflict forms. This conflict isn't a flaw in your thinking. It's a very human response to having made a smart decision and not wanting to undo it. The rate becomes tied to your identity, being the person who locked in a great deal, who made the right move at exactly the right moment. Once that connection is made, changing your situation can feel less like a practical adjustment and more like throwing away something you're lucky to have. And without a clear way to evaluate the trade-off, the rate stops being just one factor and becomes the decision point itself. This decision really comes down to one clear distinction. A financial mistake is when a move creates strain that your life and budget can't comfortably absorb. Emotional discomfort is when a move is financially workable, but feels wrong simply because the old deal was unusually good. Those two things feel very similar, but they aren't the same. When they get blended together, clarity fades, and the decision starts to feel more complicated than it actually is. The goal here isn't to eliminate tension, it's to be honest about which kind of tension you're actually dealing with. It helps to speak plainly about what a 3% mortgage really represents. That rate didn't just come out of nowhere. It came from a very specific moment in time when borrowing costs dropped to levels we're unlikely to see again. Today, we're in a more normalized environment. Rates are higher, and the question isn't about chaos or uncertainty anymore. It's about trade-offs. If you keep your current home and loan, you keep that lower borrowing cost. If you move, you take on today's cost of money instead. So the real question becomes this: if you move, what are you actually buying for the higher monthly cost? Because you are buying something. Space that finally works. A layout that fits how you live now. Fewer stairs, a shorter commute, a different neighborhood, or flexibility you don't currently have. If that value isn't clearly named, the higher payment will feel like money down the drain. And that sense of waste is almost impossible to live with emotionally, even when the numbers technically work. A low rate becomes a problem when it keeps you in a house that no longer fits your life. Not because the house is bad, but because your life has changed. This is where it helps to think in terms of functional strain, not preference. Preference sounds like wanting something nicer. Functional strain shows up when daily life is harder than it needs to be. That strain might be a commute that's wearing you down, stairs that have gone from a nuisance to a hazard, a work from home setup that never really worked, or family needs that shifted. It might be health changes, job changes, or neighborhood dynamics that no longer align. A 3% rate is great when the home still works. When it doesn't, the rate can shift from feeling like a benefit to feeling like a constraint. The path forward usually opens up once you're willing to call out exactly where the friction is. Most people don't struggle because they lack information. They struggle because they don't have a simple way to organize the information. Here's exactly how I approach it. Step 1 is clarity. Name the real problem in one sentence. Not, we want something nicer, but something specific enough that a solution could be designed around it. If the problem isn't clear, the rate trade-off can't be evaluated yet. Step 2 is expanding the options. Most people think the choice is move or stay, but there are usually more paths. Stay and do nothing. Stay and redesign. Stay with a defined game plan for a future move. Move now, or in some cases, keep the home as a rental. When the only comparison is move versus stay, the low rate wins by default. Step 3 is calculating the true monthly change. Not just the mortgage payment, the full picture. Taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, and predictability. One number, the new total minus the old total. That difference is the real cost of the move. Step 4 is spreading one-time costs over time. Selling, buying, and moving costs are real, but treating them as one emotional hit distorts judgment. Step 5 is stress testing affordability. Ask whether the new cost still works if income dips, expenses rise, or life shifts. A move only becomes a mistake when it reduces affordability too far. Low interest rate is not a moral achievement. It's a financial condition. One input among many. It helps you. You benefit from it. That's true. But it doesn't obligate you to stay in a home that no longer fits. And it doesn't mean you should accept a payment that undermines stability. This isn't a character test. It's a trade-off evaluation. The rate matters, but it's still just one variable. When the home still works and a move would be financially feasible, the friction is usually psychological. The rate becomes an anchor because leaving feels like breaking a rule about being smart. When the home no longer works and moving would strain the budget, moving can be a genuine financial risk. In those cases, redesigning or planning for a future move often restores a sense of progress without sacrificing stability. And when the home no longer works and a move is financially workable, the friction is usually emotional. At that point, the decision becomes about values, supported by math, not overridden by it. When all is said and done, you may decide staying is the right thing to do. You may decide moving is worth the trade-off. Either can be a good decision, and the right decision is different for everyone. The framework simply lets you identify the real problem, compare paths objectively, and protect your budget. If the move works, the rate may still sting, but it won't control you. If it doesn't, the budget is doing its job. A 3% mortgage rate is a meaningful advantage, but it isn't automatically a reason to stay, and it isn't automatically foolish to leave. The deciding factor is determining whether a move creates financial strain or whether it simply creates emotional discomfort because the old deal was unusually good. When those are separated, the decision stops feeling like a trap and starts feeling like a choice. If you found this helpful, the next question most people run into is quieter than the math. It's how to tell whether something is actually misaligned or whether they're just overthinking a perfectly good situation. That's exactly what the next video walks through. And if it's useful, I've also put together a simple 5-step Move Decision Worksheet that mirrors this framework. You'll find a link in the description to request a copy and work through it privately at your own pace.